Hello and welcome to North Country Matters. My name is Donna Seymour. I'm a member of the St. Lawrence County League of Women Voters, one of the civic partners for this show. Today we have Alex Calk from the Little River School in the studio with us. Just recently, an NPR poll showed that more than 80% of parents in the United States support teaching climate change. Whether they have children or not, 2/3 of Republicans and 9 out of 10 Democrats agree that this subject needs to be taught in our schools. Today's guest, Alex Calk, is a junior at Little River School in Canton, which is a school where climate change is part of the curriculum. She's the intern working on the Monthly Climate Action Vigil. Alex, welcome to North Country Matters. We are so happy to have you here. So before we get to start our conversation about Climate Action Vigil, would you give us a little thumbnail sketch of what the Little River School is and what its approach to learning is?
Sure. Little River School is a little school in Canton, New York, with like 40 students total. It's K through 12. And there's, it's divided into 3 sections: the olders, the middles, and the youngers. And the olders are mostly high school, and there's about 9 of us now. And I'm one of the olders there. I just joined this past year.
Okay. So the curriculum, is it similar to what you would find in a public school, or just a same curriculum but approached differently maybe? It's
probably around the same curriculum in some ways and different in others. The math is approached differently. In a regular school I would be in Algebra 2, but we have an integrated math. So we all work on stuff together and try to find solutions to problems without just having somebody write it on a board and just do a bunch of problems. You try to figure it out yourself, which is really cool. And for social studies and English, it's writing essays and reading books like you would find in a normal school, but there's a lot of grace for getting assignments in maybe late or having time to work on it yourself. And there's a lot of openness in writing about what you want to write about and expressing your ideas.
Okay, so it sounds like it's a very collaborative approach, which is actually what the world needs more of. So you sounds like you are getting a good start on going out into the real world. So let's talk a little bit about the overall climate action itself and what the Little River students are doing with it. Climate action is actually an educational project with a worldwide scope, isn't it?
Right. The beginning of this really started at the end of October. There was a rally in Canton Central Park to support this lawsuit against the 21 youths against the U.S. government, where 21 children ages 10 to 21 are suing the U.S. government over climate change. And it has been upheld in many courts when the government has tried to dismiss it, both the Obama and the Trump administration. And we got together and we supported it, and my Steve asked me to write a speech in support of it, and I agreed, and I gave a speech then. And after that, Steve came to me and said that he wanted to start a vigil that would meet once a month to talk about climate change, to protest, to ask our government to do something, and if I wanted to work on it with him, and I said absolutely.
And we should just tell folks that Steve is Steve Molnar, who is actually the teaches history at the little school. So this then became a class project, or at least for you it was a class project, yes.
And I bother all my friends about it.
Oh yes, okay, that sounds good. So part of what the little school offers in terms of climate is you have a green club. Tell us a little bit about the green club.
We started the green club about a month ago with several of our students, and I got our science teacher to talk to the middles and the olders about climate change. He had done a class with us about climate change, and I thought that it was really, really fascinating, but it was just for the olders. And I wanted to get the middles involved as well, which is the middle school. And we only have about like 13 or 15 students, which is the entire middle school and the entire olders class all sat together in this very cramped room, and he just talked about climate change, took questions, and the kids asked these amazing questions, gave really, really intelligent thoughts. And then the next meeting we talked about solutions that we could have, ways that we could limit our use and our use of plastic and ways to help the climate and ways to protest. And that was also really informative. And then later, Leon, our science teacher, took some of the youngers, which are, the more like 7 and 8 year olds, out, and they collected, trash that was around the school to help clean and provide for the school a healthy climate. And so I thought that was really, really wonderful.
And actually, yesterday was just Earth Day, where a lot of that kind of work was being done by lots of places, but you're trying to make this an ongoing project at your school, aren't you? It is, Earth Day isn't one day, it's going to be part of every day, right?
It's part of every day, and it's not just important on one day. It shouldn't be that, we only pay attention to the Earth on one day. We need to pay attention to the way we live constantly, and so that's one of the most important things about this.
And one of the things that today's children are going to have to learn to do is to live with a drastically smaller carbon footprint than us olders, or much olders, have always lived with, and that is because of climate change and the way that we're becoming to really understand what a lot of carbon is doing to not only our environment, but our quality of life as well. Because even though energy use, in one sense, gives you a higher quality of life, the downstream consequences of that are very bad, and the next generations are going to be paying the price for that, aren't they?
Absolutely.
So you have, one of the projects that you have developed is this Monthly Climate Action Vigil, which is happening locally, that's come out of some of this work that you're doing. You're the intern for that project. So tell us what the Monthly Climate Vigils are.
So the monthly vigils, we work basically all month on to get co-sponsorships, which I think we'll talk about later,
Right.
And people to come out and talk about climate change. And then the vigils are really not necessarily the point of this. The point is to get the word out there, and this is one of the ways we do it.
It's a visibility piece.
It's a visible part. So we
Right.
connected with St. Lawrence groups, we connected with Canton School, we connected with some older people as well, and we got, at the first vigil we didn't have very many people show up, but at the next vigil we had, 50 or 60 people show up. And it was, both of the times I've given speeches, which are just, giving outlines for, you can't be unkind to people, and this is very devoted to climate change. This isn't to protest the government, this isn't to protest the administration, this isn't anything like political necessarily, because climate change is not a partisan issue, this is a human issue.
Right.
And so I basically lay out the guidelines, give reasons why this is a necessary thing, ask people to approach people with respect and honesty and kindness, so that we can actually have a conversation. And that's just like that's what the vigil really is about.
Okay, so that's a really a critical piece, because you don't get people to change behavior, you don't get people to change their life by yelling at them or by throwing statistics at them, but by having conversations and really having meaningful exchanges. So that's very important. So you started, when was the first climate vigil?
The first climate vigil was March 1st.
Okay.
And then the next one was April 5th.
Okay. And one will be coming up in May and June, and you're going to continue this throughout the summer as well?
We're going to continue this until something is radically done about climate change.
You're going to be continuing for a little while then, aren't you?
I suppose we will.
But that's all right, that's good. So as the intern, what are your duties? And how does this internship fit into your overall educational program at Little River?
Well, some of the duties can range for everything from writing and giving speeches at the vigil to connecting with St. Lawrence groups or Canton School, to cutting out. We have these green cards that we give out with information, and cutting cards or designing them, running the social media platforms that we have, all of those and more. And then it's important in the education. First, an internship is required to graduate from Little River, 50-hour internship. But also, it's really amazing how even before this, I was passionate about climate change, but I didn't know as much as I do now. And the amount that I didn't know is really staggering.
So this is very much a learning experience for
Right.
you, right? As well as an organizing experience and lots of other skills that are very critical to this. So we talked a little bit, you mentioned before that you have several co-sponsors, mostly in the Canton area at this point, but so talk about who they are and who you'd like to attract.
Yes, we have a lot of St. Lawrence groups like theme houses and clubs with about 20 students in each, and then we reached out to Canton High School. We also have other like North Country 350 Alliance and the UU Church. Church organizations and alliances that really also believe and support our mission. And the co-sponsorships, like you don't have to give money, you just have to be willing to put your name on this project and say that you're behind it. We like to have, someone from your group to be at the vigil as well, but that's not required. And we really, we're constantly reaching out to people, constantly talking to people, constantly networking. We recently went to the energy fair at SUNY Canton and met with a bunch of people and handed out cards and talked to them and gave out email addresses so that we can facilitate more connections in not only our local community but beyond.
Right, and I just want to let people know that the League of Women Voters, which is one of the sponsors for this show, just signed on to the Climate Vigil, and the environment has always been a big part of what the League has worked on, so this is a very good fit for you. Now, all of the 4 colleges up here all have sustainability programs or alternative energy programs, so that's another natural set of partners for you, isn't it?
Absolutely, and it's going to be a little bit difficult during the summer when all the students go home, but we're still going to keep kicking all the way until fall when we get more.
And I know Canton School itself is really interested in this. There's a green club at the middle school, and they've been working on food to waste programs. In fact, that's going to be the subject of a North Country Matters show coming up very soon. So there's a lot of interest by young people in this, isn't there? It's something that touches young people's hearts very, very, very well. Why, we've seen things internationally. The Children's Trust lawsuit is just one, but there's been a tremendous international interest in climate movement by young people, hasn't there?
There has been. I think young people, as we grow, we are realizing that there has to be real actions, and there's also a general frustration with the inaction of people, whether that's because of donors from big oil companies blocking politicians from doing the right thing, or old people's just inaction to realizing the issues and supporting the science behind it. And so I think people are getting, young people especially, not only are getting fed up, but should get fed up with this system and be willing to make changes and be willing to fight for something that is as important as this. And one of the young people of my generation now is a girl called Greta Thunberg. She's from Sweden, and she has worked tirelessly on climate change. She started doing skipping school and protesting outside.
On Fridays, right.
Yep. And skipping outside and protesting outside her government building. I think she did it every day, and then she started getting more and more people devoted and watching her and realizing that this is an actual issue, and she ended up getting millions of children to start skipping schools on Friday to protest climate change and to fight for a healthy climate and to protest at their country.
She gave a very inspirational TED Talk, which I've actually seen the video of, and we will have that video URL up in our show notes, so if anybody wants to do it. She's a very, very effective speaker and very passionate and a great role model for other young people, isn't she?
Yes, she is, and she also gave a speech at the UN, which was very succinct and incredible to watch, and also really inspiring to watch, because you realize that this is not impossible. People are able to stand up and fight and have their voices heard, and so it's really, really inspirational to see that they said, yes, we need to have a young person up here to talk about the actual effects, and she did. And not only did she do that, but she really told them that they were wrong, and she told them that they needed to do something, and she was very honest and blunt about it, and I thought that was really, really wonderful.
Right, so that is much as what you're trying to do with the local climate vigils, is to give that kind, and give that kind of education and that kind of inspiration to other people. You know, you mentioned how much you've learned through this process. It is very much an education process, isn't it, to make people understand the scope of the problem and it can feel overwhelming, but there are things everybody can do, and that really is where the Climate Action Vigil is, isn't it? It's about empowering people to take local action.
Right. It's very hard to see this and feel like there's something you can do because it's such a large issue and it's getting worse every day. And when you hear like the report coming out from the UN scientists saying that we have 12 years or like things are going down the drain, I mean, what do you do with that? Nobody really knows what to do with that. And so it's really important that there's succinct actions being taken to prevent more climate change and to protest people who are doing nothing.
Right, and of course, one of the things that we know, and we saw this last year in the elections, is that a lot of green candidates, a lot of scientists decided to run for office, a lot of green candidates have decided to run for office, and they got elected. So that's a start for the kind of political change that you're talking about needing in order to actually create the change that we need in order to meet that 12-year deadline. Some of the political movements that are out there, like the Sunrise Campaign and the Green New Deal, these are things that you can help educate about as well, can't you?
Right, yes. The Sunrise Movement was, a group of students went to a politician and they asked for her to do something about climate change, and she responded really condescendingly, and it got national coverage. And they are currently doing a lot of things that are supporting the Green New Deal, fighting for climate justice, and this is a group of young people desperately fighting for our climate, and that's really encouraging to see, and it's very important.
It is, and one of the things that we know about moving politicians is that you have to vote.
Right.
And so educating voters and getting them to understand what these issues are and being informed before they go into the voting booth is really critical, isn't it? That's
Absolutely.
a big part of it.
Yeah, politicians care most about getting reelected, and they care probably less about doing the actual right thing. And so if you hurt them, if you affect them where it hurts, if you affect them in the polls, if you affect them where their job is, they'll actually do something. So it's incredibly important for people to go out and vote, and it's incredibly important to make them realize that this is an issue that voters care about.
Right, and one of the ways you do that is the visibility piece, which is to hold these events in the park once a month, because we have seen in the last couple of years, people have really reactivated their political speech by being out in public, and what we used to call in the old days getting up on your soapbox and getting people to listen to you. This is really an important part of community engagement, isn't it?
Absolutely, and it's not just, it shouldn't be just in Canton Park, it shouldn't even be in New York or Washington. This needs to be a worldwide movement of people deciding that this enough is enough. We don't have the ability to continue taking our time and saying there's, you need to wait until we can facilitate and get further and whatever. We need to do things now. People saying that you need to wait, we are behind the mark on where we should be on climate change. We need to move forward, and we need to move forward now. And so it's not just in Canton Park, it should be everywhere, and people should all be talking about this.
So would you encourage young people to look at what some of the international Friday type of events are and say to students now, think about going outside your school on Fridays, and you don't have to skip school, but you could take a few minutes to have these kind of educational moments at your own schools?
I think all students should consider not only, researching and skipping school and making their voices heard, but figuring out ways to organize and fight for their beliefs and fight for the climate. And so, you have the ability, as much as it feels like you don't have the ability to do anything, you do, especially in a group. And if you get together with people and you work hard, you can have your voices heard. You can do something important. And so everybody should be trying to educate themselves and get the word out and get people to do something about climate change.
One of the things that we always run into up here is that it's sometimes hard to talk to the people who are in political office because they aren't where you are. Do you have any plans to have invite either local politicians to your events or go to meet with them in their offices, in their district offices, to talk about these things?
We don't have any plans yet, but it's definitely not off the table.
Okay.
We have definitely have a responsibility to talk to the people in power and have them know that this is an issue that we care about. And so while we don't have plans now, it's definitely not off the table, and it'll probably happen in the future at some point.
That's very important, because one of the ways that you get the attention of the people who go to Albany and Washington is to make noise at home, because they do pay attention to what's going on back in the district, and if they hear about something often enough and long enough, they sometimes say, you know what, that seems to be an issue my people care about, I better get ahead of them.
Right.
Because
Absolutely.
politicians follow, they don't lead, they follow, and so they have to be educated about what is important to constituents. So this is a great opportunity for you.
It totally is, and it's important to make politicians know that this is something that you care about, and I absolutely agree.
So you're doing your part to educate and to work with the students in your school. You've taken the next step, which is to work in your community. Where do you take it from here? How do you get to that wider audience?
We meet with people, we talk with people, we set up meetings, and we set up things like this to get the word out and to get people talking about it and realizing that this is really, really an important issue to talk about. And so we have contacts in St. Lawrence, and we're spreading it to other colleges as well. And so our next phase is to just keep meeting with other groups, keep getting people to understand and know about the issue, and get people to come out.
So how does somebody who wants to work on this or support the work you're doing get a hold of you? What are you mentioned before that you do social media around this, around the climate vigils. What is somebody who wants to know more, how do they get a hold of you and, get that next step of education?
We have cards that we hand out with our email address, with our Twitter and our Instagram. We also have a Facebook account at the Monthly Climate Action Vigil, and our email address is climateactionvigil@gmail.com, and Climate Action Vigil is our Instagram handle, and climate_vigil is our Twitter handle.
And we'll put all of that in our show notes, because we have all of that information, so people will get a chance to see that as well. So the vigils are always on the first Friday of the month. So, and right now they're always in the park.
Yep.
So that's a place where people can come to you for education. And I'm assuming have you thought about doing any outreach to students in other schools?
We have people in my school who have been to other schools and want to talk about their old schools about it. And we are talking to other colleges, and there are people who saw our first vigil and in other towns and have expressed interest in doing that as well. I think Plattsburgh and another town that I don't remember.
So is this something that is unique to Canton, or are there other vigils going on around the country that you know about?
I don't think there are other vigils going around yet, but I know that some people have expressed interest in doing it themselves.
So you could maybe put together a little how-to and on this, and share that with other communities and other places that might be interested in doing this.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Okay, well, good. That's what we like to do, is share good ideas. So, Alex, I'm so thankful that you came in today, because this is really so important to all of us, and particularly to young people, because you are going to be inheriting a world that may be unlivable if in the next 12 years we don't get a handle on some of this stuff. And you're quite right, we don't have time to waste, and we can't wait for politicians to say that this is important. We have to make sure they understand it's important. In fact, one of the things that's happening right now is the U.S. Youth Climate Strike Team has a MoveOn.org petition that's calling on the 2020 Democratic presidential candidates to hold a climate-specific debate during the 2020 election cycle that will actually focus just on climate. And that is a wonderful way to say to all politicians, this is really critical, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I wish that more people would have debates about it and talk about it, and I really hope that the Democrats do that. I wish the Republicans would do that, because the most important thing is getting the word out, because this is not an issue that's partisan. This should not be cut along party lines. This planet belongs to all of us, and we have a duty to protect it.
And in fact, I think that what we talked about right at the beginning of the show, that 2/3 of Republicans and 9 out of 10 Democrats agree that climate change should be taught in schools, is a great way to show that it isn't a partisan issue at all. It's very much, all of us are in the same boat.
Right.
Both things. So as we wrap up here, Alex, is there any closing thoughts you want to share?
I think the only thing I would say is that it is vitally important for young people to be involved in this. And so as many young people who care about the climate and care about our planet need to stand up and say that they care about this and do something about it. Whether that's making changes in your own home or getting the word out yourself and getting educated, and I think that that's really important.
And let me just say, as someone who has children and grandchildren, that it's our responsibility as well to support that kind of work and to make sure that we do our part, because sometimes it's easier for us to get the politicians' attention than it is maybe you. But you know, something about millions of school kids going out of school every Friday and protesting this is definitely a high visibility issue. So thank you for coming in. Keep up the good work, and I hope that other communities hear what you have to say and start to think about put their own climate vigil together, because it's a great way to bring the community together around a critical issue, isn't it?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming in. These conversations are a production of North Country Matters, which is filmed here in the Fred W. Cleveland Computer Center of the Potsdam Public Library. These shows are a civic collaboration between the St. Lawrence County League of Women Voters and the Potsdam Public Library. Until next time, remember, our North Country matters and our climate matters even more. Thank you, Alex, so much for coming in.